So it would have to be like now that we'd start.
Yes.
And I'd have to explain that I did this recording. This is our second take.
This is the performance for the West Coast, because
what happened was I went over to my camera or to my phone, and it said that it had just turned off from heat, which I didn't know it could do that, so I lost it. So we'd already done all of this. Actually.
We had done it. We've gone through this entire.
So now
we started talking about the cat.
Everything here is out of order.
Yeah.
And we said some brilliant, genius things.
I know.
I
don't know
if
we can recreate this.
But as you can see, I've already drunk everything. So we're going to try this again.
Okay. And while you're beginning, I'll number some.
Mm-hmm. We're going to do a second attempt.
Yes.
To finish off Jay's journal in the next 6,800 words. There was that end of it where I was like, we're not going to be stuck in this loop forever, and
That's right.
we are.
We are. It's
shit. Anyway,
this is that movie.
I'm just going to do it again. Groundhog Day. I'm just going to read it.
Maybe we should go backwards.
If you haven't seen the Go Ask Gallus episodes, or part 1 and 2 of the saga, that's your problem. No mercy will be shown, not even to us.
That's right. We've seen it twice.
In the last,
if you haven't taken the prerequisites, your grade is going to suffer.
In the last 3 hours of this, 3 hours today almost, we've had a lot of fun at Sparks' expense. But the more I look into it, the more an at first invisible horror is bubbling up. And today we're going to dedicate a lot of our time to that.
And let's do this again.
Yeah.
Because you're blocking your face.
What is the horror, you might ask? Actually, you already know now, but you know like we're coming in cold.
It's the review class.
Beatrice Sparks is both a dangerous psycho and incredibly painfully average, just like you and me. She's the same coloring book with a different set of crayons. Jack Kerouac, after writing On the Road, and Robert M. Pirsig, after writing Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, about 15 years apart from each other, both made extremely similar reflections on their success. Effectively, that they were average people doing average things, and the only difference is that they decided to write it down. They claimed their literary success did not stem from any deep insight, but from a deep familiarity that the reader felt with what they wrote. In the first 3 hours, we've shown beyond any reasonable doubt that Sparks has no insights to offer. Her characters are flat and unbelievable. Her writing style is juvenile and forgettable. And even her facts are wrong or fabricated. And here's another thing, is that as I write this thing, if there were like some jokes that you had or some things like, oh, you went too fast. Now you have time to like interrupt me.
Okay, I'll remember.
It's good. Much like Pirsig and Kerouac, we have to conclude that the success of Sparks and her books is because she expressed fears, dreams, and perceptions of reality that were shared by millions. And that insight is the only scary part of the book. Now, I'm going to put these in out of order again, because if this fails a second time, then we're just cursed. And
we're not.
And it turns out that
or you can,
all of the Christian stuff is correct. And
right.
We're not supposed to be doing this. Anyway.
It's a sign from God if it doesn't work this time.
Or Satan.
Part 8, the unreal reality.
The only thing more ridiculous than witchcraft is that we're doing this again. And magic of Jay's journal is Sparks' claim that it's nonfiction. In part 1, I was mystified by this. If Sparks was just to write a sensationalist hoax, she could have easily done so without involving Alden Barrett. The angle of using a real teen as the source didn't really sweeten the story in any meaningful sense. Most people had never heard of the local tragedy. Besides, Alice was fake. Sparks' stories in Key to Happiness are clearly fake. Her mentor, Norman Peale's little stories in his books are obviously transparently fake. There's really no issues with that. Some people just choose to believe regardless. In fact, she was fully cognizant of the implications of writing something so clearly fraudulent based on a real person. She'd see the immense risk of a lawsuit and ruining her reputation. Any reasonable person would back out or at least change it significantly enough so it cannot be traced back to the real Jay. So assuming she didn't want to write a sensationalist hoax, and someone told her somewhere of the consequences of that kind of misrepresentation, we were forced to come out to the most implausible of conclusions. I have the audio recording of the first one. So it's going to be like, after people die, and then they say, oh, here's the live recording of that, and let people collect like every instance of like them playing, Freebird or whatever.
Oh, right. This is the bootleg. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The audio is the bootleg.
It will only be available on cassette.
On 8-track.
Where was I? Forced to go. Okay. So, I don't think Sparks thought the book was a lie. Last thing was,
Can't be.
can't be. Instead, I believe she thought she was being accurate, even though 95% of the text was made up by her. When she told Scott Barrett that removing the parts about voodoo and bloodbaths would be the deceptive act, I now think she was being genuine, that she really was this crazy. And furthermore, the shocking allegation is that I think this kind of insanity is so common that we consider it to be normal, and all of us do it. It only usually looks more familiar. Next thing I know, that microphone's going to go. It's going to be, but yeah, this one at least. My separation and quarantining of Sparks into some imaginary loony bin is so I could focus on the differences and remove any oxygen in the room to look at our similarities.
This is all yours.
It's why we find things like murder, rape, or drug addiction so frightening, and why we find such a need to depict the perpetrators as monsters and distance ourselves from them as much as possible. It's not that we think we can never do such things, but instead the realization that, well, actually, to be honest, we probably could. We all want to fantasize that if we were there, we would all be August Landmesser, the man with his arms crossed in a sea of people, refusing to salute Hitler in 1936. There's about 200 or so people in that famous picture, and tens of thousands more in hundreds of other pictures, with no August Landmesser crossing his arms. We all want to think that we would be him. To state that that's impossible. That there was only one August Landmesser, and that wasn't us. That reality is a scandal. And it's also true. I never refused to say the Pledge of Allegiance at school. I never protested it. Even today, if the national anthem is played, I'm somewhere, and everyone stands up, I really don't care enough to be disagreeable. I just go along and stand as well. For the concentration camps along the border, the endless wars, no. That's not what I mean. I'd say, but for some undefinable pablum of values. But that's just a comforting lie. I'd be standing for all of it. For the bombs of enduring freedom and everything else we've ever done. So, if I was in Germany in 1936, and the president was walking by, and we were supposed to raise our arms, all right, I likely would. And you would too. What a nightmare. That's the unreal reality. Second time through. What do you think?
So far, so good. Should we be checking to make sure it's...
Yeah. But if you were in Germany in 1936, and he was walking on by, and you're like, I guess this is what we do now, you probably would, wouldn't you? Or would you be the August... Do you think that you would actually... I have to say, I
don't know
wouldn't.
if I would be in a crowd, but
of course,
I might
because
be part of the...
Right.
Yeah.
But let's say that you were like, secretly Jewish, right? And like
secretly.
People didn't know, right?
Yeah, people do know.
And you were working.
Yeah.
And, and then he comes by. And then you're like, well, I don't want people to suspect me, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody had their own reason, right?
Right.
And it wasn't...
Self-preservation was most of it.
Exactly. Or social whatever. And it wasn't because they were anti-Semitic or that they wanted to gas, It's just like when people stand for the national anthem. It's not like, those damn children at the border.
Think about it. It's not applying to them personally.
Right.
They don't have children that can't get across the border. They're not Jewish. They're not being affected by whether or not they stand or not.
Yeah, I mean, that's the real nightmare.
Get on with the baseball game.
It's the banality of evil, right? That's the unreal reality that we all live in, is that we're all part of that system. But let's go over how absurd Sparks is again, and then I'll try to show how normal she is and how we have all been certain flavors of crazy our entire lives. There she was, pulling a freshly typed sheet out of her Underwood Model 319 with the 700 Club playing softly in the background.
That's right. It's an Underwood. Now I thought it was a Smith Corona.
It's like a dream state when everything just changes. When you turn your head and then television turns into like a radio. As she reads the page, she nods her head and smiles. Yeah, this tracks with reality. This is what happened, and nobody will have any issues believing this. Actually, the nice thing about recording it on the video is that we're not confined to that 1 hour cutoff exactly. We go slightly over. Here's an example of what she thinks 16-year-old Mormon boys in Utah were doing in 1970.
Let's hope we don't go over.
I know, right? I'm still timing this. When the chanting started, Martin brought in a teensy mewing kitten. With one twist, he wrung its little neck. Instantly, we all put forth every gram of power at our command to bring it back to life again. We're okay. Before we go on, I wonder what her edit process was. What ended up on the cutting room floor? Maybe. Here's this high schooler in 1970 wrote about Nixon and had anxiety about the draft. He can't fool me, Sparks laughs. I know what really happened. Let me replace this with the truth. The truth? Well, at least in our head, yes. Let's be archetypical about this and break it into 3 arguments.
First argument, the secret.
You think it's still recorded?
I wonder if you want to look. Well, Chris is checking to see if we're
still going. Oh my goodness, look at that.
See if we're overheated.
Not yet. It's not like,
But back to...
I wish it was like beep beep or something like that.
Yeah,
that'd be nice. Yeah.
Back to the secret.
That's right. Last time, how we said if you believe something is secret or hidden, in the absence of evidence, will be read as the evidence of a secrecy. Sparks' biases were so strong that she injected a presumed reality into her characters. Like when you were a child and an adult would accuse you of something you didn't do, and then call you a liar for denying it, and then tell another adult that you did something and refuse to admit to it. Act like you just heard this for the first time. Oh,
I am. It just seems so fresh.
It does. You see how this works?
Yeah.
Okay. They think they're being a good adult, but really they're just overly dedicated to being wrong. Similarly, I like how we have a B plot for this one.
Yeah, that's right.
Similarly here, Sparks sees it as a sign of her integrity to put in parts she believes was there, but nobody was willing to talk about. This is similar to a few other books coming up soon, where the author claimed to have uncovered hidden memories of being in a satanic cult. But I assume we all do it. This is also expressed in Sparks' opening monologue about the potentially imaginary 3 sources that she was unable to get any admittance of the supernatural out of. If these people did exist, their denial could be interpreted as how brainwashed and frightened they are, as opposed to them being honest and Sparks simply being wrong. Thinking you're a brilliant mind that has uncovered secrets is so much more rewarding and reassuring than entertaining the idea of being incorrect. This is similar to the McMartin preschool trials in the 1980s, where the people working there were denied being witches and Satanists. But the parents were so convinced this was the case that their denial, the lack of evidence supporting it, was all just a demonstration of how guilty they were. That was enough for one of them to spend 5 years in jail. Or let's take the supposed terrorist cell arrest in Detroit right after 9/11. The family video at Disneyland was interpreted as them scoping out their targets. Doodles by the children were called bombing plans, and sermons of Islamic tapes that sinners must repent to Allah, just like, sinners must repent to Jesus or whoever, were seen as damning evidence of a vast sleeper cell network by the FBI. Not by sensationalist know-nothings, but by, our federal investigators. And, of course, the lack of any direct evidence was the evidence of just how secret it was. These people were eventually exonerated. I mean, they left the United States because they're like, fuck this country, but, but we all do this. This is the worst part. We all have a contested perimeter of things we consider plausible. Good fiction intentionally navigates these spaces that are shared among us. There's a hinterlands between the believable and the unbelievable. Within that contested, unknowable space is intrigue, sensationalism, circus, and showmanship. For example, it doesn't sound all familiar. A story about, say, a man who is so disloyal, he even has a mistress to his mistress, is within the plausible realm. Solidly in the hinterlands, but it's easy to push it over. Now let's say the wife and the 2 mistresses are actually the same woman, and the mistresses are actually just because she's possessed by 2 ghosts, right? To me, this story is now less credible, but that's only because I don't believe in ghost possessions. Unless you believe in whatever space the author goes into, you exit the story. And I mentioned that beforehand, how when things get too ridiculous. So the sheet out of Sparks Smith Corona is believable because it's based on a set of beliefs that, frankly, she and I do not share. See, now you're picking it up. It's good. She believes in satanic mysticism. I change the model of the typewriter every time. She believes in satanic mysticism. The children's parents believed in the preschool horror story, and the FBI believed in sleeper cells. In a way, the more things one finds to be ridiculous, maybe, the fewer things they actually believe in. It takes a cynic to laugh at the world and a believer to be fooled by it.
Oh. And I think that should go on your tombstone.
Are you planning to murder me? Are you making plans? You got some shovels over here. I know.
I'm ready.
But how common is this?
A shovel and a 45. What?
How common is this? This is at least as common as religion.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Take Noah. A man and his family were somehow able to create a giant boat zoo and collect 8 million species of animals. The Bible calls for 7 pairs of each, which makes it a population of 112 million. The San Diego Zoo, for reference, has a collection of 12,000 animals. It's 20 times the size of the largest boat. Noah's Ark would have to measure about 30 miles on each side to house its 112 million animals, right?
It would have to be the size of San Diego.
I try to measure that out. It's like it's like from Santa Monica to Long Beach.
Yeah.
It's seriously, it's like, it's an island. Then again, the Bible never described the measurements of Noah's vessel. So we could, it's actually in Genesis. It's 450 by 75 feet. About the size of a house, maybe?
The size of the entire property.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
About this.
Yeah. But this is not, but it's still not enough. It's nowhere near.
Right, even if you were stuff all of these things and assume the animals wouldn't eat each other,
there's no way. There's no way.
Because they need space too. Right?
Yeah.
But I assure you, these calculations do not present any issues to believers. Things don't have to work. The pieces don't have to fit together. There does not have to be an underlying practicality to make things believable. This is natural. Seeds don't look like trees. Infants don't look like adults. We all make the cognitive leap when describing futures. The logical analysis I just did is not intrinsically part of the process of imagining futures. We all do this. This is what faith is for. Even the most militant atheists still believe in tomorrow.
Second argument, the faith.
When Sparks puts two completely unrelated things together, for instance saying Zen and Hare Krishna and all that crap are just crap, and has a scene that looks almost Pentecostal, where a wart is removed from Jay's finger through some laying of the hands faith healing, she's actually doing the same thing. These two things come from the same place. Before Jim Baker went to jail, he's the one that really killed Pentecostalism, right? He was that, and it was supposedly a much bigger thing before that, but for whatever reason...
You don't hear that word as often.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah, you don't hear that description,
But that is, the tents on the outskirts of town when they're saying, you were healed, right?
Right.
That's, exactly. I mean, we all know about it, but we don't hear about it because we all sort of...
It's been...
We all assume that they're frauds, I guess.
Well, they are.
Well, they don't think...
Faith healing? Do you not think that faith healers know they're full of crap?
I think it's more like fortune tellers, how some fortune tellers actually believe in it.
They believe that what they're saying is...
Yeah.
All right. I think most criminals know they're committing a crime.
But think about it this way. People walk in believing it.
Yeah.
What makes you think that the person on the other side might not also believe in it?
I guess it's possible, but people want to believe it.
If I go to a confessional booth and there's a priest on the other side, I think that he believes in the faith, right?
Yeah, but
they're not all con men.
But the faith healer has evidence that it's not true. And most religions don't have evidence that something is not true. They have evidence that the specifics aren't correct.
But that doesn't matter because they're blinded by their faith.
All right.
And they believe in a separate reality, as we were describing here.
So they believe they're getting someone to stand out of a wheelchair?
Yeah. Yeah, I believe so. Because there's an interplay of ignorance, arrogance, and presumptions without any feedback loop to correct the course. As I said, right? They don't do follow-up. They don't do the hospice care on these people.
Yeah. All right.
They both arise from the axiom that the blinding delusion from faith is a separate, equally valid form of reality. That mentality produces both the clumping together and a separate reality tract. She says as much in the next passage. A Dayan, by the way, is a witch in Hindu folklore. Here she's doing a practice called Syncretism, which is the combining of different beliefs, like how Christmas is full of Germanic pagan symbols. It's normal, right? So, the Dayan was leaning over me. We have another doubting Thomas, yes. For Thomas, for you non-Christians, was a doubting disciple of Jesus. So, I'm just curious, do you know who Thomas is in Christian lore?
In a vague way, only not because I've learned it, but because I've
It's
heard.
referenced in mass culture.
It's right, exactly.
Yeah. So, in 12 words, she effortlessly interweaves Hinduism and Christianity. It's not too much of a stretch, really, since they are products of the same human tendencies and both argue for the existence of a separate reality. That's how we get to the next passage. Now the Dayan confirms that what I'm learning is just an extension of Christianity. Just the secrets that were known by the ancients at the time of the first peopling of his world. She doesn't capitalize the word his here, which is interesting.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
Because I don't know.
That seems to be a religious way of doing it.
I wonder if Times did it, and maybe it was just Simon Schuster that didn't.
But I think that's part of the style, is if you're referring to a deity, you capitalize the pronouns.
I guess another thing is that she's trying to not look too Christian in the text. Yeah. I don't know. All the secrets that were given from Adam on down, as man was able to receive them. Right? Like, she doesn't actually do any direct Bible references. Yeah. Right? As opposed to Norman Vincent Peale, where half his text is Bible. The receiving here are delusions. The ability to... Actually, as an aside, I'm doing an analysis trying to find out all of the different Bible references he does in all of his books.
Norman Vincent Peale.
Yeah, to see just do like a frequency distribution of like which ones are most popular. I mean, I've got some really interesting things that I'm working on with him. The receiving here are delusions. The able refers to blind faith, and like before, since they are secrets, the lack of evidence is only proof of their secrecy. Going back to the hinterlands analogy, everyone draws their own lines of what, beyond demonstrable reality, they choose to believe in. Beatrice expresses her LDS perimeters, which is the perimeters of anybody's belief, as follows. I've heard about the devil all my life, that he tempted Adam and Eve, that he misled Cain, and he's always been around to tempt us and get us to do evil. But it mostly seemed like a fairy story, along with... it's just fairy story, not fairy tale, which is interesting. Along with elves or munchkins or Santa Claus. Not now. Now I know he's real and that he does exist, and that he does, or maybe just on occasion can, control parts of this universe. And there's a separation. As we talked about last time, this is essential for Sparks and the adjacent evangelicals world, that there's battling spirits of good and evil within us, and our primary job is one of relational hygiene between them. Even in less religious contexts, we talk about laziness, ruggedness, work ethic, heck, even spirit as a secular placeholder for this belief. Assessments and first impressions as well. We don't necessarily allegorize this dynamic through supernatural forces, but don't be fooled into thinking you or I live outside that society. We simply don't.
Third argument, the known.
I sound like Rumsfeld here, R.I.P., right?
Yeah, right.
Or
in tribute, in homage.
I mean, like, what would be the opposite of like rest in peace? Like rest in turmoil?
Burn in hell.
yeah, like Rumsfeld here, BIH. The fact that none of this is real isn't the core problem. It's that none of these people can admit to that. Instead, they look to tie far-flung details and sloppily misappropriate outliers together to build a case to support their implausible beliefs. Really, since this model of the world is fixed, this is a steadfast stubbornness. However, their grand trick is to see the aggregation of unrelated things and creating patterns out of randomness as them being open to new evidence and ways of thinking. That's a seemingly contradictory language. Words like conclude, know, fact, and truth expressing a fixed worldview, juxtaposed to imploring people to be open-minded to new ideas. Essentially, the structure is, I've irrevocably concluded something because I'm so open-minded, as opposed to, I'm believing in something that is wrong, and I need to be as open-minded as possible to maintain my erroneous beliefs in the face of evidence. Here's a modern example. Someone I know claimed the COVID vaccine magnetizes people. He showed me videos of people putting magnets on their skin and staying there. I was intrigued, so I asked, what about identically shaped metals that are non-magnetic? What would happen if you placed a piece of paper between the skin and the magnet? Magnetic forces pass through paper, right? What about trying a compass? What about people that could do this before COVID vaccines? And you see pictures from like 2005. Yeah. People like, I put magnets on my skin or whatever, right? And people who can do this but haven't been vaccinated. And people that have been vaccinated but are unable to do this, like me, for instance. The magnets just fall off, right? Now, this is what I see as open-minded. If all those inquiries could be satisfied, then I'd be really interested in looking more into it. By this, I'm not dismissing the idea. I'm establishing a more rigorous standard than a video of someone placing a smooth object on oily skin, which I expect to always stay there.
Yeah.
But that's not what he means by open-minded. This conversation went over weeks, by the way, and we were loggerhead the entire time. Like it was very interesting. What it means to him is exercising whatever mental acrobatics are necessary to work around the objections while maintaining the belief. This is why people of strong faith think scientists are closed-minded. A scientist demands a standard of rigor to be met to demonstrate some claim, while people of faith will hold on to their beliefs regardless of the evidence in front of them. That's, after all, what the word faith means. But like everything else, none of us are above this. We all do this without thinking naturally. For instance, projecting human emotions onto animals. Almost everyone has elaborate conversations with their pets, as if Miss Fluffy really does understand the personal social dynamic in their life, and trust me, nobody wants to hear the evidence that the doc has no idea what you're saying. We all try to stay comfortable, insulate from cold realities, and wrap ourselves up in satin delusions. Here, I'll give you an example from the text. I must not give myself too much, yet enough to keep me stimulated, alert, and ever with an open and curious mind. It has become my conclusion that as people grow older, they close themselves into their own little worlds, indeed lock themselves in, shut the windows of the eyes, bolt the exits and entry of their ears. They're not looking for new ideas, concepts, powers. Indeed, they will not accept them if they are presented. Not with me. Forever, I will be looking towards the infinite, the unknown, the evolving, the omnipresent, the omnipotent. My mind will be open. I will search and search and search. Again, people setting requirements are equated to being closed-minded. Funny L. Ron Hubbard story before we go on. And it's going to be funny the second time around. In Dianetics, another fraudulent book, he says that a reader could attain the state of clear, which supposedly brought with it effects like total recall, with as little as 20 hours of counseling techniques that he came up with. He announced that he would demonstrate a clear in a public event in 1950 and brought someone out on stage. Audience members immediately started asking questions like, you study physics, what are Maxwell's equations? And read the front page of today's paper from memory. I've got a copy right here. I'll even let you look at it for a few seconds. At one point, Hubbard was on stage, standing in front of the clear, trying to control the crowd, when someone asked, what color tie is he wearing? Of course, the clear failed to answer any of these questions. A large part of the audience got up and left. Now, in modern money, they paid $11 for the ticket. They made the journey out there. They're willing to believe, but he couldn't produce.
They wanted to believe.
They wanted to believe. Of course, you want to go in there. Oh my God, you got perfect memory? Okay, well then tell me what you had for breakfast on August 7th. Like I'd love just
yesterday. What'd you have for breakfast yesterday?
20 hours of this book, and I would be able to do that. Jeez, I'd love it. Right? So still believing after a failure like this isn't being open-minded; it's just being fooled. Then again, we all do it, right?
End of reasons.
All right. So let's review. Sparks thought this was an honest account because her ignorance, arrogance, and assumptions led to a faith that blinded her from seeing reality. By believing it was secret and hidden, she gave herself an out when she was confronted with the lack of evidence. Instead, she pieces together narratives through unrelated events that correspond with her preconfigured beliefs. And what more is super common? What the hell do you think January 6th was about, right? Or QAnon, or any of those things. That's all of this is. What's the placebo effect all about? Why do we find statistical puzzles like Monty Hall problem, Bayesian statistics, or Simpson's paradox so difficult? Why do we find so many innocent people on death row? Nobody looks at just the facts, as Joe Friday says. That's not a possible thing to do. It's always a selective construction of interpretations of the past. I put a supposed fact in front of you, like that, and immediately after you look at it, it becomes the past and your interpretation of it. It's all just perception and reality. All of it. It's all just recall. That's why many think adverse results from acting out on their beliefs are only a failure of their own will and ability as opposed to being fundamentally wrong about how they think the world works. It's just, I'm not doing it right. Because it's perception and recall, they will not uncover the more useful reality. To them, and often to me and you, it's not a demonstration of incorrect knowledge, but instead insufficient faith and effort. Let's go for B again. It's the shits knowing about all this wonder and miraculous power, not being able to share it with the medical scientific world. Maybe we just don't know how to present it. More likely it has to be perfected first. Again, that's just faith and effort, right? It's scary, but it shouldn't be. No more scary than electricity or the telephone or TV or radio or even how the garage door works from a button. These things are all kind of magic too. It's just that no one wants to use that word for things they can't comprehend. This is also true for things that take longer than you think or things that you try to do and fail. We all do this. We think we don't try hard enough, believe in something enough, or take enough time with something. When maybe we're just not doing it right or can't be done or whatever, right? Perhaps our whole attempt at whatever we're doing was futile and we assess things fundamentally wrong. The inability to admit to this is shared by everyone, and our only protection from the truth is our own personal ego. I mean, look at this show. I thought we were going to be done with Jay's Journal in 20 minutes, 31 days. In fact, I thought we were going to be done like an hour ago. But here I am, hour 3. I was totally wrong. It's so easy to paper over these failings through stories we tell ourselves about who we want to think we are. Let's see if that's still recording.
All right.
I know.
Let's see.
It's still going. Okay.
Okay. Not overheated.
I know. And we're about halfway done.
Okay.
So,
Part 9. The two kinds of women. Doting homemakers and lecherous vixens.
No. Sparks and I aren't the same people, though. So let's go back to things we don't share. Jane S. Jacquet, a 1970s feminist literary scholar, claimed Latin American fiction had 3 female archetypes. Her words, not mine. In short, and in her words, the virgin, the mother, and the whore. Virgin, mother, and whore.
That's correct.
The Bible kind of has those 3 as well.
Yeah.
You know? Maybe that's...
And a 70s supergroup.
Yeah. Sparks has streamlined that by dropping the first. Eggheads like Carl Jung, who can't even spell his name sensibly, it's funny to them around. I've tried to impress people by saying there's like 10 archetypes or something, but who's got time for all that? That's what's great about Sparks, her simplicity. She was a true genius of the modern age. And she leaves nothing gray. Everything is as black and white as that sheet on the IBM Selectric 2 she used. For instance, here is the mother. And my devoted and gentle mom, who could have gone into scientific research instead of becoming a mother. Dad says she had 3 companies after her when she graduated, but she preferred to get married and raise a family. She's all the things anyone can ask for of a wife and a mother. Our home's always clean and smells good, and she always has time for us. Compare and contrast to the whore. Brad's date last night was an octopus. This is the only time I've ever seen somebody describe handsies.
Yeah, especially from a woman.
I know. Brad's date last night was an octopus. He had to fight her off all night. I could hear them scuffling around the basement. Isn't that... the back seat.
Basement. The back seat.
Isn't that funny? Brad having to protect his virginity by practically slugging the wench. Good little church girls, except at the drive-in movies. Ha! If only their mothers knew. And in another, Brad and Dell both say they have to fight girls off too. I don't think this is ever true. Dad's always throwing in these little sex things when we talk and telling me how I have to protect girls and how guys are the aggressors and all that. He doesn't know how much things have changed. I would have liked living in his day. And then back to the mother. God's plan of making... it'd be nice if we could see that. Like, there's that pickup culture, but you see, with women instead.
Yeah. Women, instead of it being construction workers, it would be nurses or secretaries whistling at the guys going down the hall and, hey, baby.
Hey, hot stud, come over here. Yeah. like Janet Napolitano.
Right.
I can never get over the idea of her just chasing around her secretary.
That's right.
Come here, Toots. For the background, she was fired from the Clinton administration for being too handsy with the woman.
Really? Was it the Clinton administration?
No, sorry, the Obama administration.
Obama administration.
No, Obama. Yeah, she left for complaints of sexual impropriety.
Miss Napolitano.
I would never get over that. And then back to the mother. God's plan of making parents such a wonderful one. They love their kids in a deep way. In a deeper way, then kids love them. I wonder if when I'm a parent, I'll love so completely and without reservation. And now we'll eventually get to the 100 or so pages in Keys to Happiness on really damaging bad advice on how to capture men for marriage. But first, like with the other narrative themes, viewing woman as fundamentally malevolent and scheming maybe just speaks to her own fantasies more than anything else. Sometimes she combines her ephebophilia. Have you heard of that about that?
No, I don't know.
It's basically people separate the idea of pedophilia, which is people wanting to have sex with pubescents, as opposed to people wanting to have early teenagers, right?
Early tweens.
Well, basically, something like that. It's the whatever. It's like middle school on 13, up or whatever. 16, whatever. Yeah. So she combines that with a desire to have sex with teenagers. Ephebophilia is a desire to sex. To her, every woman is a backstabbing harlot theory, as in this entry. I want so much to be macho with 3 hairs on my chest and 13 under my arms. Girls seem to think I'm pretty neat looking, though, but most of them have got the hots for anything that's male. And so now that was pretty repulsive. I wouldn't attribute such desire to the woman if it wasn't for her viscerally physical descriptions. She never, for instance, mentions adults with the same kind of physicality as she refers to children around 14 to 16. This also happens to be the ages of all our fake diarists. Seems to be sort of this weird obsession with teenagers. Actually, after reflection, what I find even more repulsive is that gender relations are always merely transactional, which is actually another property of people that have the kind of fetishization. Last time I alluded to emotions as property model without any elaboration. Essentially, in the Sparksian literary canon, all emotional actions can be viewed as a power exercise, as if there's a required subordinate-dominant relationship that engages through the language of emotions. And that's the subordinate-dominant relationship is another sort of sexual abuse kind of thing. I wonder if she ever perpetrated. It's a good question.
Yeah.
In her counseling sessions.
Did she sublimate it by having this fantasy that she wrote about?
I don't know.
Or did she actually, maybe that's why those boys are all committed suicide. Have all committed suicide.
No, I mean, in society, we attribute it as if it's like isolated to men, but it's not. I mean,
she's a grown woman. She was a middle-aged woman.
Right. And
her patients committed suicide, and I wonder if not only didn't she help them, I wonder if she made it worse.
I wonder if there's
aggression.
I wonder if that happens if there's child molesters that are women, and then they go in front of the court, and the court just doesn't believe them.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, there's no such thing as a woman doing that, and they always get off scot-free. I wonder if those people...
Well, there's not that many charged, because men are embarrassed about that, because their society has made them the aggressors all the time, and it would be very not masculine to claim you didn't want to be approached by a woman.
Well, I guess, but if like a 4-year-old is chasing after an 11-year-old, I mean, it's pretty clear, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, but still, even at 11, I wonder if a boy wouldn't do that, or if no one would believe him.
There was that case a couple of years ago of that teacher who
happens a lot,
who had a child with like her student. Remember?
12-year-old or something.
Yeah, and she went to jail, and then when she came out, they married.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very strange, right?
But if an 11-year-old girl said, "My teacher is approaching me sexually,"
let's go load the gun.
Yeah. But if a boy did it, I think parents, at least in previous years, went, cut it out.
Well,
I don't believe that's happening.
I mean, not only, but if it was like my female teacher, regardless of what gender the child is, right?
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
I wonder if they would not believe it. Yeah.
Right. For instance, during a section where Jay is getting married, yes, that happens, he wrote the following. We went through the ritual of eternal slavery to each other, although I, the male, would always technically be the master. And it isn't just here. It's also in a supposedly wholesome family stereotype as well. The children are always prostrating themselves in front of the mighty deity of mom and dad. For instance, Jay, when writing about his dad, I'm going to leave this unedited. Sparks really hammers this view way more than necessary. I was proud of him. I guess it was the first time since I was a little kid that I remember what family was really like. It was like I was a little part of him, proud of him, scared for him, praying for him, supportive of him. And he said that my presence gave him strength and courage and security. It was so neat, I want to cry. We really were one, and I want to be just like him, strong, intelligent, trustworthy, honorable, supportive, incredible. She injects this parenting fantasy into the children. It's just so obvious.
That wasn't likely to be feeling that way.
Right, of course. Compare that to the passage where Jay talks about himself. I'm sick, physically, emotionally, and mostly spiritually sick. Oh God, I'm a debased, inhuman animal. I hate myself, despise myself, loathe myself. It's really a groveling, self-deprecating anti-hero narrative. There are no heroes in her stories, really. I'm a pea-brain that lives on wishes and fantasies and doesn't know his ass from his head. It's worth noting that Sparks is insulting the dead author of the diary with a description that actually fits her pretty well, right? The obvious question is whether Sparks is just presenting the character and knows what she is doing, or whether she thinks this is what's in other people's heads. I think there's pretty significant evidence that the latter is the case. She delusionally sees the world as spastic emotional yo-yos of children who secretly want to be part of the church and worship their parents. Now, I've dealt with teenagers before. They are kind of spastic yo-yos. Like, I get it, right? But, like, it's more complicated. All the while, the teenage boys are running around trying to protect their virginities from lascivious huskies who won't take no for an answer, or as B calls them, loosey loose legs. That certainly is wrong. My evidence that this is not a narrative invention is because she's a pretty sloppy storyteller and doesn't seem to have solid definitions around how her characters act or what they know. She can't seem to execute proper narrative fiction. So, like, it's like, you know, who is this character? What's the world? Like, she doesn't seem to really know that or be able to construct that right. For instance, our 16-year-old narrator says the following: I hate the superstitious namby-pamby of having to have 13 people, but I guess it's like having to add the extra 2 spoonfuls of flour to a cake mix when you live at a high altitude, so it won't fall in the middle. There's no internal dialogue or filter that tells her teenage boys don't know this. Or the only reason I know this is because I moved from Los Angeles to Provo, a gain of 5,000 feet, and find out the hard way. Since she never seems to catch these kinds of slips, and her world is so sloppily constructed, the more plausible explanation, she does not know what she's doing, and she sees all of this as if it was authentic. Not only, but a clean separation between the good, the bad, the mother, the whore, or the weed and the seed is a common belief in the religious conservative world. In fact, the weed and the seed was a speech given by, do you know who gave the speech in The Weed and the Seed?
The Weed and the Seed was a speech given by
Dan Quayle.
Dan Quayle.
In 1982 at the Commonwealth Club of California. That was well acted. He didn't know last time. Somehow the show has just become about quoting stupid people. So apparently, so let's go. As one step on behalf of law and order, and on behalf of opportunity as well, the president has initiated the Weed and Seed program to weed out criminals and seed neighborhoods with programs that address the root causes of crime. And so it's like this idea of like, there aren't good people that do bad things or bad people that do good things. They're separate entities from each other. Yeah. And you have to separate them apart because there are no sort of initial pressures that force people to do these, there's no complexities, right? And finally, the temptress is an age-old trope. What else is Eve's role in the biblical creation story? Speaking of syncretism, the Japanese has a word for this archetype, sukeban. It's a delinquent or boss girl, described by Japanese police in the 1980s as omens of downfall. In Jay's journal, Jay is brought into occult practices and crime by the influence of these nympho-Jezebels. Moving on to sukebans, they are reported to engage in activities such as stimulant use, shoplifting, theft, and violence, but face lesser penalties for their crimes. Kind of exactly like what happened here. Or in Goas Gallus. Once again, this is all disturbingly normal and not even exclusively American. Oh, speaking of crimes.
Part 10. Check out the cool crimes I just did.
The first crime Jay gets in trouble for is working at a pharmacy supplying his then-girlfriend with narcotics by replacing pills with placebos and smuggling them out. Today I had to get Debbie some barbiturates so she can sleep. Man, I hate this. Debbie begs me to get her uppies and downies.
Which is not what they called them at all. They called them uppers and downers.
Well, I mean, a fabric softener, I have to. Any way I can. The only way I can. I'm hooked on her. And there's your sukeban. It's the boss girl, but smuggling drugs out of a pharmacy, replacing them with placebos, and killing people in the process isn't the only well-documented crime.
On both sides, both the person that didn't get their pill and the person that takes it and shouldn't, possibly killing 2 people with each one of them.
With one crimes. Stone, right? Yeah. True. I noticed the pickup in front of the boat. Anybody could hotwire that. Skipping down. Well, at least I've got something to concentrate on beside my old problems now, like breaking the rule for house arrest, wrecking the bike and the truck, but hell, I don't care. It was exciting. So, there's lots of crimes that go on in here. And it's weird. It's like, I'm just going to write these felonies that I'm committing, right? No problem. Here's how I did it. Sparks doesn't seem to understand how people... Sparks does... I made the same mistake last time. Sparks does seem to understand how people's indifference towards the law works, and she does seem to understand the world of external pressures. Here, it's a temptress and older counselor that descends our diarist into a life of Satanism through some kind of fictitious grooming gang. The dynamics are roughly understood, but then a number of irrational fears get piled on top of it, get processed through the story machine, and come out the other end as a fairly classic recruitment narrative. What do you think? Do you think we're good? Now everything's fine.
Yeah.
What happened the first time? I shouldn't have left my phone in the oven before I did. The book also has copious amounts of drug mentions. It's roughly the same dynamic as Alice. She attributes unrelated human behavior to narcotics that she has no familiarity with. Although still completely unaware of the existence of poppers, she name drops a couple of street drugs that were left out of Alice. Let's quote. Lyle and Fats came in with some PCP, which none of us had ever tried. So not feeling any pain at this point, we all indulged. 2 pages later, on the next day, after they were familiar with PCP, Tina was given a vial filled with a foul-smelling, sticky, thick liquid. I drank it, skipping. Even the name offended me. It was blasphemous. Angel dust. It should be called devil dust. Angel dust is a street name for PCP. So they should have been familiar with it by the second time it came up. Right?
Yes.
B is presenting them as related, but distinctly different narcotics in the text. Interestingly enough, the street name Angel Dust really picked up in the 1970s when B was editing the text after the real J had died. But then again, we've already established none of this is real.
Right.
The next page is a callback to Alice, where she caught 2 boys kissing and attributed it to the effects of cannabis. I wonder if the ancient Romans and Greek civilizations and the people in Sodom and Gomorrah, which is a dog whistle, had just had orgies when they were stoned. Was that their excuses too?
That's a common side effect of smoking marijuana, kissing boys.
Right, yeah. Right. I've heard about people getting stoned and horny as opposed to hungry. Yeah. Yeah, all the pornos, they start out with people smoking weed.
That's right.
There's no such thing as a fluffer,
It's the weed delivery such instead of the pizza delivery.
Exactly.
The modern ones.
Exactly. That's
the pot.
Get this guy high. He's not horny now. Yeah. Like the people she ran her 1960s scam with, B seems to be aware of the right questions, but only has the wrong analysis loaded in her quiver. Actually, probably why. It's because her only familiarity with drugs is probably drinking.
Yeah.
Which does have that.
Yeah, that's right.
And so she probably then projects that onto...
She conflated what she knows, which is getting drunk, with what she doesn't know, which is doing drugs.
Exactly.
And that each drug has a different effect.
Mm-hmm.
They're not all like getting drunk. A few of them are like getting drunk.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that could be, I just realized that right now. Drugs are a problem. Crime does happen. It is often for stupid and irrational reasons. Those parts she gets right. But the conservative ethos sees everyone as isolated atomic islands and not existing in something called a society. They fail to comprehend the actual larger forces at play and instead substitute supernatural ones in that place. Like many of the divides between myself and the conservatives, the theatrics and affectations are different. But to peel back the superficialities, the observations that led to establishing the goals are basically the same. For instance, pretend it's the 1970s. Drug users are unhappy. Gay people are depressed. And teenagers seem to be distant from their parents. The difference is in our assessment of why that is. There are systems that make mental care unaffordable, and then economic pressures create distances between people and other stresses that lead to these types of issues, right? Sparks and her team's solution is to pray differently and create better relationships with the Christian God. Now, this is an absurd answer for these problems, but it's also ridiculously easy. No new laws, no different politicians, no financial costs. Nobody needs to go to jail. It's immediately actionable and everyone can participate. And it's very empowering. It basically says that yes, there are larger forces at play, but by simply wishing them away hard enough, you can change everything. I have to admit, it sounds pretty great. And I wish it was true. That'd be much easier than decades-long political struggles or spending billions of dollars on something. It's not that these people are irresponsible. They just believe they're responsible in a different way. We all want easy, known, actionable, achievable solutions to problems because worrying about things suck. Wouldn't it be nice if we could get a key to happiness through the power of positive thinking? I just plugged 2 future episodes. They don't work, but we'll find out about that soon enough. For now, we're finally drawing to a close.
Part 11. The end of the madness.
The most disturbing thing about J. Cheryl and Sparks isn't how crazy, but in how normal she is. Earlier, we mentioned how it's possible to read paranormal events in the book as a potential reality if you believe paranormal things are possible. This is way back in a faith argument I made earlier. Gallup occasionally does surveys on how many Americans believe in the paranormal. We are defining it here as ghosts, haunted houses, telepathy, astrology, witchcraft, ESP, clairvoyance, demonic possession, and reincarnation. In 2001, the percentage who believed in at least one of these was, can you take a guess?
75%.
Oh, you got it pretty good. It's almost like you heard this before. 76%. And in 2006, it was 73%, which is effectively the same.
Yeah.
You're pretty good at this.
I would have actually guessed it was more.
You do your homework.
Yeah.
Chapman University had their own paranormal survey in 2018, which with a different listing: haunting, Bigfoot, fortune tellers, clairvoyants, Atlantis, and aliens. Despite a slightly different list, and being 12 years later, they too found a 76% belief in at least one. It's interesting how the Christian firms seem to throw Atlantis in as if it's like some kind of...
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Like,
but Chapman University, even though it's now...
we don't have time for this. A 1988 survey by Ipsos with a slightly different list shows similar results. Only because you weren't fast enough.
Okay.
In 51 minutes. The Japanese have a special term for this as well: chinibyo, or second ear disease, used to describe early teens who have grandiose delusions, who desperately want to stand out, and who have convinced themselves that they have hidden knowledge or secret powers. The Japanese have a lot of great words, as it turns out. That means I'm actually in the minority when I roll my eyes at passages like this. We went to this queer old lady's house who had powers I still can't believe. She actually levitated me. I know I didn't just think it because I was careful not to eat or drink anything. The second sentence is actually somewhat telling, and we are going to have a slight detour. You 21st century digital boys and girls probably don't know why a sentence about eating and drinking is in there, but you might. And it's because of Carlos Castaneda. He's an anthropologist. He wrote a collection of books in the 60s and 70s about an elderly indigenous spiritualist or yakai sorcerer, depending on how generous you read them. Unlike the fake acid trip of Go Ask Alice, Carlos was admittedly as high as a kite the whole time. He witnessed essentially this exact same scene in the teachings of Don Juan. Now, it's relatively trivial narrative to independently create. It's only a sentence long. To say Sparks is lifting Castaneda sounds like a stretch. But then by including a sentence where she explicitly excludes the possibility of the indigenous narcotics, by saying, no, you didn't eat or drink anything, unlike this guy, she is separating herself from Castaneda. She'd only feel compelled to distance it if she borrowed it to begin with. Otherwise, she wouldn't even put it in there.
Yeah.
And if you're not convinced that she was familiar with or lifting the UCLA anthropologist studying yakai mysticism, let's go to the next page. I'm going to go to the university and see how much research has been done regarding unknown powers. It's easier to stay detached from them than I thought it would be. And that's what an anthropologist does. A thorough scientific study really needs to be made of these phenomena. And that's Castaneda's premise for the whole book series. Again, she thinks she's smart and hiding stuff. It's just obvious. She read this very popular book. My irrational belief apparently is that my expectation for humanity are absurdly too high. We all aim higher than we can reach, and I can do this for the next 6 minutes. That's good. Let's go back to the paranormal and the public's belief. The primary problem is that they come from unpredictable logic based on imagined fears. We probably all, unfortunately, know multiple people who believe, say, the Clinton emails about pizza were really secret code for underground cities where politicians do satanic child sacrifices. And I wish this was less common than it is. But belief that Clinton was a broom-riding black magic sorceress likely cost her the 2016 election. It was that close, right? The most interesting thing is anybody who's in politics long enough will do things of ill repute. George Bush's Read My Lips, or his son's Mission Accomplished fan, or Willie Horton or Gary Hart. There's, actual realities that can be seized upon. Whereas Hillary Clinton has been, ever since her husband was the governor of Arkansas, like 88, 87. Like she's got 30 years of stuff to dig up. Why are they making shit up, right?
That's right.
But the current calculus is to gravitate to the least credible claims. The feedback loops with reality get cut, and these people get stuck in a world of nonsense indefinitely. Just like I feel like we are right now. But not with us. Well, not this time. Finally, 31 days and 60 pages after the first words of Jay's journal, this is my last sentence on that insane book that unwittingly documents the frightening banality of commonplace madness. But that was not my last sentence in Sparks. And I'm not going to do this another time. Yeah. Next time, as a final spark, we'll find out her key to happiness and close out the 5-hour extravaganza. Oh, one other thing, I intend to put a website together with these scripts and post audio eventually. People were asking where they can find this, and I realized I had no good answer. No. The recording went on the entire time this time.
Oh, okay, that works. That works. What were we talking about before about plays and musicals? And
I felt so like relieved last time when I finished that off. I thought, oh, finally. It was so much work to put this together. And then I went up, and then the phone was off. I was like, what the fuck? But plays me. Oh, we were talking about like I don't know.
I don't think we have time.
Yeah, we don't. I should just probably end this. And then I'll have to independently upload it to Instagram because it's not live right now.
All right.
We'll see.
There we go.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Oh look, 56 is good.